The coach wheels rattled to a stop at a frontier-way station that looked more like a collection of weathered boards held together by stubbornness than any proper building. And Kendra Pruett pressed her palm against the fogged window, searching the handful of waiting figures for a face she had only seen in a single faded photograph. She did not find him. Instead, a tall man with broad shoulders and sun-weathered skin stepped forward as the driver climbed down. His hair was dark, streaked with gray at the temples, and he wore the rough clothes of a miner. His face was all hard angles and unreadable planes. He held a letter in his hand, the envelope creased and worn as though he had carried it for many miles. Kendra's heart stuttered. She knew, before a single word was spoken, that something was wrong. The driver opened the coach door and she descended, her green fingers gripping the frame for balance. The stranger's eyes found her immediately. They were gray, the color of winter skies, and they held something she could not name. Pity, perhaps, or sorrow. Miss Pruett. His voice was low and rough, like gravel underfoot. Yes. Her own voice came out steadier than she felt. I am Kendra Pruett. I am looking for Robert Ashford. The stranger's jaw tightened. He glanced down at the letter in his hand, then back up at her. Around them, the few other passengers were collecting their belongings, heading into the way station for a hot meal or a place to sleep. The driver was already unloading trunks from the roof of the coach. My name is Rowan Anders. He paused, as though weighing his next words carefully. Robert Ashford was my partner. We worked a claim together up in the Silver Ridge territory. The word hung between them like a stone dropped into still water. Kendra heard herself say, though she already knew. There was an accident at the mine 3 weeks ago. A rock slide. Rowan's voice did not waver, but his eyes did not meet hers. Robert did not survive. The world tilted. Kendra felt the ground shift beneath her feet, though she knew it was only the shock moving through her body. She had traveled for nearly a month to reach this place, riding coaches and wagons across territories she had never seen, leaving behind her family and her home. All to marry a man she had never met, a man who had offered her a future when no one else would, and now he was gone. I see. The words felt hollow. What else could she say? She had not known Robert Ashford, not truly. They had exchanged letters over the course of a year, practical words about a practical arrangement. He needed a wife to help him build a life on the frontier. She needed escape from a town where orcs were tolerated at best, despised at worst. Their agreement had been clear and without romance, but it had been hers, and she had pinned her hopes to it. Rowan held out the letter. He wrote this the day before he died. He asked me to give it to you if anything happened to him. Kendra took the letter with trembling fingers. The envelope was addressed to her in Robert's careful handwriting. She broke the seal and unfolded the paper, her eyes scanning the words written there. The letter was short. Robert had not been a man of many words, even in writing. Miss Pruett, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I am dead and Rowan is giving you this as I asked. I am sorry. I know you came a long way and this is not what you expected, but I need you to know something. The accident that killed me was not an accident. Someone wants me dead because of the silver seam we found on the claim. I do not know who, but I have my suspicions. I do not want you to be in danger. Take what money I left with Rowan and go back home. Forget about me in this place. I am sorry I could not give you the life I promised. Robert Ashford. Kendra read the letter twice, then a third time. The words did not change. She looked up at Rowan, who was watching her with that same unreadable expression. He says it was not an accident, she said slowly. No, Rowan agreed. It was not. He says someone wanted him dead. Yes, and you believe him. Rowan's eyes darkened. I was there when the rock slide happened. I was on the other side of the mine shaft. The supports had been tampered with, cut partway through so they would collapse under weight. Robert went in first that morning. I should have been with him, but I was late coming from town. His voice remained level, but there was something beneath it now, a current of anger held tightly in check. When I got there, the entrance was blocked. It took me hours to dig through. By the time I reached him, he was already gone. Kendra's chest felt tight. She had not known Robert Ashford, but the thought of him dying alone in the dark, knowing someone had meant for it to happen, filled her with a cold fury. "Who did this?" she asked. "I do not know for certain," Rowan said. "But there are men in the territory who have been trying to force us off the claim since we struck silver. The richest vein in the ridge runs right through our land. We refuse to sell. And now Robert is dead and the claim is empty." "Not empty." Rowan's gaze held hers. "Legally, the claim passes to his next of kin. Robert had no family, but he had a contract. You are his intended wife. That gives you rights." Kendra stared at him. "I never married him. How can I have rights to his land?" "Frontier law is different," Rowan said. "A marriage contract is as good as a marriage when it comes to claims. You are entitled to half of everything Robert owned, including the mine. The other half is mine." The coach driver appeared at Kendra's elbow, holding her trunk. "Where do you want this, miss?" Kendra looked at the trunk, at the way station behind them, at the mountains rising in the distance. She thought about Robert's letter, about his warning to go home. She thought about the long journey she had already made, about the town she had left behind where people crossed the street to avoid walking too close to her. She thought about her mother's tired eyes, and her father's bent back, and the small house that had never felt big enough for her dreams. "Leave it there," she said, pointing to a spot beside the station door. "I will collect it shortly." The driver shrugged and set the trunk down, then headed back to the coach. Rowan was still watching her. "Robert wanted you to go home," he said quietly. "Robert is dead," Kendra replied. "And I have no home to return to, not really." Something flickered in Rowan's eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or approval. "The claim is yours by law," he said. "But the men who killed Robert will not care about that. They will try to take it from you one way or another. Then I will need help protecting it." Kendra folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her coat pocket. "You were Robert's partner. Will you stand with me?" Rowan was silent for a long moment. He looked at her properly for the first time, taking in her green skin, her small tusks, her pointed ears. She waited for the familiar flicker of disgust or unease, but it did not come. His expression remained neutral, thoughtful. "You did not know him," Rowan said finally. "No," Kendra admitted. "But he offered me a future when no one else would. He made me a promise, even if he could not keep it. And someone murdered him for silver. That is enough." Rowan nodded slowly. "All right then. We will need to go to the territorial office in Greystone first, get the claim transfer registered properly. After that, we can go back to the mine and figure out what to do next." "How far is Greystone?" 2 days by horse. "There is a boarding house here where you can stay tonight." "We will leave at first light." Kendra picked up her trunk. It was heavy, packed with everything she owned in the world. Rowan reached out and took it from her without a word, lifting it as though it weighed nothing. He carried it into the way station, and she followed, stepping into a dim room that smelled of wood smoke and cooking meat. The woman behind the counter looked up as they entered. Her eyes widened when she saw Kendra, and her smile faltered. But Rowan set the trunk down with a thump and said, "She needs a room for the night, clean sheets and a decent meal." The woman's eyes darted between them. "That will be $2. Rowan pulled coins from his pocket and laid them on the counter. The woman took them and handed him a key. "Upstairs, second door on the left," she said, her voice clipped. Rowan handed the key to Kendra. "Get some rest. We have a long ride tomorrow." "Where will you be?" I have a room at the boarding house down the road. I will be here before dawn." He hesitated, then added, "Lock your door tonight. Do not open it for anyone." Kendra took the key. "Do you think someone will try something?" "I do not know," Rowan said honestly. "But Robert thought he was safe until the morning he died. I will not make the same mistake." He left without another word, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. Kendra watched him go, then turned to find the woman behind the counter staring at her with open hostility. "How long are you planning to stay in Greystone?" the woman asked. "I have not decided," Kendra said evenly. "We do not get many orcs out here. People might not take kindly to it." Kendra met the woman's gaze without flinching. "I am not here to cause trouble. I am here because I was invited," the woman snorted. "By Robert Ashford, I suppose. Everyone heard about his arrangement, desperate man to send for an orc bride." The words stung, but Kendra kept her face calm. She had heard worse. "Will there be supper served tonight?" The woman's mouth thinned. "In the dining room at 6. Do not be late." Kendra picked up her trunk and climbed the stairs, finding the room Rowan had paid for. It was small and spare, with a narrow bed and a single window that looked out over the dusty road. She set the trunk down and sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap. She had imagined this day so many times during the long journey. In her imaginings, Robert Ashford had been waiting for her at the station. He would have been kind if reserved. They would have ridden to his homestead together and begun the work of building a life. It would not have been love, but it would have been partnership, respect, a place to belong. Instead, she was alone in a strange room, holding a dead man's letter, with nothing but a disputed claim and a stranger's word that she had any right to be here at all. Kendra pulled the letter from her pocket and read it again. Robert's words were matter of fact, but she could sense the fear beneath them. He had known he was in danger. He had written to warn her away, but he had also made sure she would inherit the claim if something happened to him. That had been deliberate. He could have written a different will, left everything to Rowan, or sold the claim before he died. But he had not. He had kept the contract, had honored his promise even in death. She owed him something for that. Justice, at least. Kendra folded the letter and tucked it away, then rose to wash the dust from her face and hands. The water in the basin was cold, but it felt good against her skin. She changed into a clean dress, something simple and practical, and braided her black hair back from her face. Then she went downstairs to the dining room. The room was half full, mostly men in rough work clothes, a few families traveling through. Every head turned when she entered. Conversations faltered. Kendra walked to an empty table in the corner and sat down, her back straight, her hands folded on the table. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, people returned to their meals and their conversations, though she could feel their eyes on her, could hear the low murmur of voices discussing her presence. The woman from the counter brought her a plate of stew and bread without a word, setting it down with a sharp clink of the dish against the wood. Kendra thanked her anyway. The stew was good, thick with meat and vegetables, and the bread was fresh. She ate slowly, savoring the warmth after weeks of travel. A man at the next table leaned over. He was middle-aged with a greasy beard and small eyes. "You are Ashford's orc, are you not?" Kendra looked at him. "I am Kendra Pruett. Heard he died before you got here. Shame that. Long way to come for nothing." "I am here for the claim," Kendra said evenly. "It passes to me by contract." The man's eyes narrowed. "That's so. Seems to me an orc has no business owning silver land. Might be someone else has a better claim to it. The law says otherwise. Law is one thing. What happens on the frontier is another." The man leaned back in his chair, his smile unpleasant. "You best be careful, girl. Accidents happen out here." Kendra set down her spoon very carefully. "Is that a threat?" just friendly advice. The man stood, dropping coins on his table. "Greystone is no place for your kind. You should get back on that coach and go home." He left, and Kendra sat alone in the corner, finishing her meal. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. The man's words had been a clear warning. Someone did not want her here. Someone who knew about the claim and about Robert's death. She went back to her room as soon as she finished eating, locking the door behind her as Rowan had instructed. She pushed a chair under the handle for good measure, then lay down on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep did not come easily. Every creak of the old building made her tense. Every footstep in the hall made her reach for the small knife she kept in her boot. But the night passed without incident, and when dawn broke gray and cold outside her window, she rose and packed her belongings. Rowan was waiting outside when she came down, holding the reins of 2 horses. One was a sturdy bay mare, the other a gray gelding with intelligent eyes. He handed her the reins to the mare without ceremony. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Yes." Kendra had learned as a girl, though she had not ridden in years. "Good. We need to make Greystone by nightfall tomorrow. The trail is not easy." Kendra tied her trunk to the back of the saddle and mounted. The mare shifted beneath her, testing her weight, then settled. Rowan swung onto the gray and they set off, leaving the way station behind as the sun rose over the mountains. They rode in silence for the first hour, following a narrow trail that wound through pine forests and rocky outcroppings. The air was cold and thin, and Kendra's breath misted in front of her face. She was grateful for the heavy coat she had packed, though it did little to block the wind. Rowan rode ahead, his back straight, his eyes scanning the trail. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who had spent years in the wilderness. Kendra watched him, trying to piece together what little she knew. He had been Robert's partner. They had worked the claim together, had found silver together. But Robert's letter had not mentioned him beyond asking him to deliver it. There had been no warmth in those words, no indication of friendship. Estranged, Robert had written. Rowan was the dead man's estranged partner. "How long did you know Robert?" Kendra asked, urging her mare forward until she rode beside him. Rowan glanced at her. 5 years, give or take. And you were partners that whole time. Most of it. We met in a mining camp up north. Both of us were working for a big company, breaking our backs for pennies. Robert had the idea to strike out on our own, find a claim no one else wanted and work it ourselves. We pooled our savings and bought the rights to a piece of land in Silver Ridge. Did you find silver right away? No. We worked that claim for 3 years before we hit the vein. It was hard going. Winters were brutal, supplies were scarce, and we nearly gave up a dozen times, but Robert was stubborn. He believed there was something there, and he was right. And then someone tried to take it from you. Rowan's jaw tightened. Word got out about the strike. It always does. Men started sniffing around, making offers. We turned them all down. The claim was ours, earned fair, but some people do not care about fair. They care about profit. Who made the offers? A man named Cyrus Holt. He owns half the claims in the ridge, either through buying them outright or forcing people off. He wanted our land, and he wanted the silver under it. When we refused to sell, he tried other methods, like murder. Rowan's silence was answer enough. They stopped at midday to water the horses and eat a cold meal of bread and dried meat. Kendra sat on a fallen log, watching the forest around them. The trees were thick here, their branches heavy with old growth. It was beautiful in a stark, lonely way. Why did Robert send for a bride? She asked suddenly. Rowan looked up from where he was checking the gray's hooves. He wanted a family, a real life, not just scratching silver from the ground until he died. And he chose an orc. He did not care about that. Robert judged people by what they did, not what they looked like. Rowan straightened, meeting her gaze. He said in his letters that you worked hard, that you were practical and honest. That was enough for him. Kendra felt a pang of something she could not name. Grief, perhaps, for a man she would never know. Or gratitude that someone had seen her as more than just her green skin and tusks. "You did not approve," she said quietly. Rowan frowned. "What makes you say that? Robert called you estranged in his letter. And you do not seem surprised that I am here, which means he must have told you about the arrangement. But you did not write to warn me after he died. You waited until I arrived." Rowan was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed, a sound like wind through trees. "Robert and I argued about the bride contract, not because you are an orc, because I thought he was rushing into something he did not need to rush into. We had struck silver. We could have hired help, built the claim up properly before bringing a wife into it. But Robert wanted something to work for beyond the mine. He wanted a future, and he wanted it now. We fought about it, and I said things I should not have said. After that, we barely spoke outside of work. And then he died." "And then he died," Rowan agreed. "I did not write because I did not know what to say. I figured when you arrived I would tell you in person and you would go home. I did not expect you to stay." "I have nowhere else to go," Kendra said simply. "And Robert left me the claim. He must have had a reason. He did. He wanted you taken care of, even if he could not be the one to do it." Rowan's gray eyes were steady. That is the kind of man he was. They mounted again and rode on. The trail grew steeper as they climbed into the mountains, winding through narrow passes where the rock walls pressed close on either side. Kendra's mare picked her way carefully over loose stones, her ears flicking nervously. Rowan rode ahead, guiding them with the ease of someone who had traveled this path many times. By late afternoon, the sky began to darken. Clouds gathered over the peaks, heavy with the promise of rain. Rowan cursed under his breath and urged the gray into a faster pace. "There is a shelter about a mile ahead," he called back to Kendra. "We need to reach it before the storm hits." Kendra dug her heels into the mare's sides and the horse surged forward. They were racing now, the wind picking up around them, the first drops of rain beginning to fall. The trail narrowed further, hugging the side of a cliff that dropped away into a dizzying chasm. Kendra kept her eyes on Rowan's back, trusting the mare to find her footing. The shelter appeared just as the storm broke in earnest. It was little more than an overhang of rock, but it was deep enough to protect them and the horses from the worst of the rain. Rowan dismounted and led the gray inside, and Kendra followed, her clothes already soaked through. They unsaddled the horses and rubbed them down with rough cloths from the saddlebags, then built a small fire using dry wood Rowan had stashed in the shelter on a previous trip. The flames caught quickly, casting flickering light across the rocky walls. Kendra sat close to the fire, shivering. Her coat was heavy with water, and her hair had come loose from its braid, hanging in wet ropes around her face. Rowan handed her a blanket and she wrapped it around her shoulders gratefully. "We will stay here tonight," Rowan said. "The trail is too dangerous in the rain, especially in the dark." Kendra nodded. Outside, the storm raged, lightning splitting the sky and thunder rolling through the mountains. She watched the rain pour down in sheets, turning the trail into a muddy river. "How much further to Greystone?" she asked. "We should reach it by tomorrow afternoon if the weather clears." Rowan was unpacking supplies from his saddlebags, setting out more food and a tin pot for boiling water. "There is a territorial office there, and a sheriff. We can get the claim transfer recorded and report what happened to Robert." "Do you think the sheriff will investigate?" Rowan's expression was grim. "Depends on the sheriff. Some of them are honest men, some of them are in Cyrus Holt's pocket. And if this sheriff is in Holt's pocket, Then we will have to find another way to get justice. Rowan filled the pot with water from a canteen and set it over the fire. But first things first, we need to make sure the claim is legally yours. Once that is done, no one can take it from you without a fight. Kendra pulled the blanket tighter. Tell me about the mine. What is it like? Rowan settled back against the rock wall, his legs stretched out in front of him. It is a hard place. The mine shaft goes deep into the mountain, following the silver vein. The work is dangerous and the hours are long, but the silver is good quality, worth a fortune if we can get it out safely. How much have you mined so far? Enough to pay off our initial costs and start saving. Robert wanted to build a proper house on the claim, not just the cabin we have been living in. He had plans drawn up, talked about it all the time. Rowan's voice softened slightly. He wanted to make it a real home for you. Kendra's throat tightened. I wish I could have met him. He was a good man, Rowan said quietly. Stubborn as hell, but good. He would have treated you well. They sat in silence, watching the fire burn. The pot began to boil and Rowan made a simple stew with dried vegetables and salt pork. It was not much, but it was hot, and Kendra ate it gratefully. Outside, the storm showed no signs of letting up. Rain hammered against the rocks and the wind howled through the pass. You said Robert had suspicions about who killed him, Kendra said after a while. Did he tell you who? Rowan's face hardened. He thought it was one of Holt's men. Holt has a foreman named Victor Kane who does his dirty work. Kane has been pressuring us for months, making threats, sabotaging our equipment. Robert was convinced Kane was behind the tampering. But you do not have proof. No, and without proof, it is just our word against his. Rowan poked at the fire with a stick, sending up sparks. That is why I did not go to the sheriff right away. I knew it would be his word against mine, and Holt has influence in Greystone. I needed time to gather evidence to find someone who would testify. Have you found anyone? Not yet. People are afraid of Holt. He owns the largest mining operation in the territory, and he is not shy about using violence to protect his interests. Anyone who crosses him ends up hurt or worse. Kendra thought about the man at the way station, his thinly veiled threats. Someone warned me off last night, a man at supper. He said I should go home, that accidents happen on the frontier. Rowan's head snapped up. What did he look like? Kendra described the man, his greasy beard and small eyes, his unpleasant smile. Rowan's expression darkened. That is Jacob Pruett. He works for Holt, runs errands and spreads word. If he was there, it means Holt already knows you arrived. Rowan leaned forward, his eyes intense. This is going to be more dangerous than I thought. Holt will not let you claim the mine without a fight. Then we will fight, Kendra said. Rowan studied her for a long moment. You are not afraid. I am terrified, Kendra admitted. But I did not come all this way to give up at the first sign of trouble. Robert left me that claim. I intend to keep it. Something like respect flickered in Rowan's eyes. He nodded slowly. All right then, we do this together. They finished their meal in silence, then banked the fire and settled down to sleep. Kendra curled up in her blanket near the fire, listening to the storm and the steady breathing of the horses. Rowan lay on the other side of the fire, his back to the rock wall, his hand resting on the rifle beside him. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, Kendra dreamed of dark mine shafts and falling rocks, of Robert Ashford's face that she had never seen, calling out a warning she could not hear. She woke to gray dawn and the smell of coffee. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and dripping. Rowan was already up, heating water over the rekindled fire. He handed her a tin cup of coffee without a word, and she drank it, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. They packed quickly and set out again, the horses' hooves splashing through puddles left by the rain. The trail was slick with mud but passable, and they made good time. By midday, the forest began to thin, giving way to rolling hills dotted with scrub brush and wildflowers. In the distance, Kendra could see the buildings of a town, small and scattered but unmistakably civilized. Greystone, Rowan said. They rode into town just as the sun reached its peak. Greystone was larger than the way station but still small by any measure, a collection of wooden buildings clustered around a main street. There was a general store, a saloon, a boarding house, and a squat stone building with a sign that read Territorial Office. People stopped to stare as they passed, their eyes following Kendra with open curiosity and suspicion. Rowan led them to the Territorial Office and dismounted, tying the gray to the hitching post. Kendra did the same, her legs stiff from the long ride. They climbed the steps together and Rowan pushed open the door. Inside, a clerk sat behind a desk piled high with papers. He looked up as they entered, his eyes widening when he saw Kendra. "Help you?" he asked, his voice wary. "We need to register a claim transfer," Rowan said. He pulled out a folded document from his coat. "Robert Ashford died 3 weeks ago. His claim passes to his intended wife under frontier contract law." The clerk took the document and read it, his brow furrowing. "This is the Silver Ridge claim, the one with the big strike?" "Yes." The clerk looked at Kendra. "You are the intended wife." "I am Kendra Pruett," she said. "I have the marriage contract here." She pulled the contract from her own coat, a legal document signed by both her and Robert months ago, witnessed and sealed. The clerk examined both documents, then looked between them and Kendra and Rowan. "This is irregular," he said slowly. "I will need to verify this with the territorial judge." "How long will that take?" Rowan asked. "Judge is in town now. I can send for him. Wait here." The clerk disappeared through a back door, leaving them alone in the office. Kendra looked around at the maps on the walls, the filed claims and deeds, the official seals stamped on everything. This was the machinery of civilization, the system that was supposed to protect people and property. But she could not shake the feeling that it was all just paper, easily torn or ignored when it suited those in power. The clerk returned a few minutes later with an older man in a dark suit. The judge had white hair and sharp eyes, and he carried an air of authority that filled the small office. "I am Judge Harlan," he said. "Let me see the documents." Rowan and Kendra handed them over. The judge read them carefully, his expression giving nothing away. Finally, he looked up. "The contract is valid," he said. "Under territorial law, Miss Pruett is entitled to inherit Robert Ashford's half of the claim. The other half remains with the surviving partner, Rowan Anders." Relief flooded through Kendra. "So the claim is legally mine." "Half of it, yes. I will have the transfer recorded immediately." "You will need to pay a registration fee of $5. Rowan pulled coins from his pocket and laid them on the desk. The judge nodded to the clerk, who began filling out new documents, his pen scratching across the paper. "There is one more thing," Rowan said. "Robert Ashford's death was not an accident. The mine supports were sabotaged. We believe it was murder." The judge's eyes narrowed. "That is a serious accusation. Do you have evidence?" Robert suspected he was in danger. He wrote a letter before he died, warning Miss Pruett. Rowan pulled out the letter and handed it to the judge. "And I saw the cut supports myself. Someone wanted him dead." Judge Harlan read the letter, his face growing grim. "This is concerning. Have you reported this to the sheriff?" "Not yet. We came here first to secure the claim." "The sheriff's office is 2 doors down. I recommend you speak with Sheriff Dawson immediately. He will want to investigate this." The judge handed the letter back. "If there was foul play, the responsible parties must be brought to justice." The clerk finished the paperwork and handed Kendra a sealed document. "This is your claim deed, Miss Pruett. Keep it safe." Kendra took the deed, her fingers trembling slightly. It was real now. She owned half of a silver mine in the middle of the frontier, a place she had never seen, built by the labor of a man she had never met. It was overwhelming and terrifying and strangely exhilarating all at once. "Thank you," she said. They left the territorial office and walked 2 doors down to the sheriff's office. It was a small building with barred windows and a single cell visible through the open door. A man sat behind a desk, his boots propped up, his hat pulled low over his eyes. He looked up as they entered, and Kendra saw the flash of irritation cross his face when he saw her. "Sheriff Dawson?" Rowan asked. "That is me. What do you want?" "I am Rowan Anders. This is Kendra Pruett. We are here to report a murder." That got the sheriff's attention. He dropped his boots to the floor and sat up straight. "Murder? Who got killed?" "My partner, Robert Ashford. 3 weeks ago at our mine in Silver Ridge. The rockslide that killed him was not an accident. The supports were tampered with." Sheriff Dawson's eyes flicked to Kendra, then back to Rowan. "That is a big claim. You got proof?" "I saw the cut supports myself, and Robert wrote this before he died." Rowan handed over the letter. The sheriff read it, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he tossed the letter back across the desk. "Says here Robert thought someone was after him. Does not say who." "He suspected Cyrus Holt or one of his men," Rowan said. "Holt has been trying to buy our claim for months. When we refused, he started making threats." "Threats are not murder." "No, but sabotage is." Sheriff Dawson leaned back in his chair. "Cyrus Holt is a respected businessman in this territory. He employs half the miners in the Ridge. I am not going to accuse him of murder based on a letter and your word." "Then come to the mine and look at the evidence yourself," Rowan said, his voice hardening. "See the cut supports. Talk to the people who knew Robert. Do your job." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, Anders. I do not take kindly to being told how to do my job. And I do not take kindly to my partner being murdered and the sheriff doing nothing about it." Tension crackled in the air. Kendra stepped forward, placing a hand on Rowan's arm. "Sheriff, all we are asking is for an investigation. Robert Ashford is dead. If it was an accident, an investigation will prove that. But if it was murder, the person responsible should face justice. Surely you agree with that?" Sheriff Dawson looked at her, his expression sour. "I agree that justice should be done. But I am not going to start a witch hunt based on suspicions. If you want me to investigate, you need to bring me real evidence." "The cut supports are real evidence," Rowan said. "Maybe. Or maybe they were damaged in the rockslide itself. I am not a mining expert. Are you?" Rowan's jaw clenched. "I have been mining for 15 years. I know the difference between damage from a collapse and damage from a saw." "Then you should have brought me photographs or witnesses. All you have is your word, and that is not enough." The sheriff stood, clearly done with the conversation. "If you find something concrete, come back. Until then, I have other work to do." They left the sheriff's office, Rowan radiating anger. Kendra could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched into fists. She felt her own frustration rising. The sheriff was not going to help them. He was either incompetent or in Holt's pocket, and either way they were on their own. "What do we do now?" she asked. Rowan was silent for a moment, staring down the street at nothing. Then he took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "We go to the mine. We document everything. We find witnesses if we can, and we build a case so strong that even that useless sheriff cannot ignore it. And if we cannot, then we find another way." Rowan met her gaze, his gray eyes fierce. "I am not letting Robert's killer walk free. One way or another, they will answer for what they did." They bought supplies at the general store, stocking up on food and equipment. The storekeeper was more polite than the clerk at the way station, but Kendra could still feel his unease. He spoke to Rowan, not to her, and he counted out their change with obvious reluctance. Outside, as they loaded the supplies onto the horses, a woman approached. She was young, with brown hair and a plain dress, and she carried a basket of laundry. She stopped a few feet away, her eyes on Kendra. "You are Robert Ashford's bride," she said. It was not a question. "I am Kendra Pruett," Kendra replied. The woman glanced around nervously, as though afraid of being seen talking to them. "I am sorry about Robert. He was a good man. He used to buy bread from my mother's shop. Always polite, always paid fair." "Thank you," Kendra said softly. The woman hesitated, then stepped closer. "You should be careful. There are people in this town who did not like Robert, who did not want him to succeed. I do not know who, but I heard things. Whispers." "What kind of whispers?" Rowan asked. "That the big strike was too much, that it made people angry, that Robert and his orc bride were not welcome here." The woman's voice dropped even lower. "I think someone wanted him gone, and now that you are here they might want you gone too." "Do you know who?" Kendra asked. The woman shook her head. "No, but I know Victor Kane was in town the day before Robert died. I saw him at the saloon, drinking with some of the other miners. They were talking about the Silver Ridge claim, about how it was not fair that two men should have all that silver." "Did you hear anything specific?" Rowan pressed. "No, but Kane looked angry. He always looks angry, but this was different, like he was planning something." The woman glanced around again. "I should go. I just wanted to warn you, be careful." She hurried away before they could ask anything more. Rowan watched her go, his expression thoughtful. "Victor Kane," he said quietly. "Robert was right. Can we prove it? Not yet. But if we can find someone who saw Kane near the mine that day, or someone who heard him talking about the sabotage, we might have a chance." They mounted and rode out of Greystone, heading east toward the mountains. The trail climbed steadily, winding through pine forests and across rocky slopes. Kendra's body ached from days in the saddle, but she pushed the discomfort aside. They were close now, close to the mine, close to the truth. The sun was setting when they reached the claim. It sat in a narrow valley surrounded by steep hills, a small cabin and a mine entrance carved into the rock face. The place looked abandoned, the cabin door hanging open, the ground littered with tools and debris. Rowan dismounted and stood staring at the cabin, his face carved from stone. Kendra slid off her mare and walked to his side. "This was home," he said quietly. "For 5 years this was home." Kendra could see the pain in his eyes, the weight of loss. She wanted to say something comforting, but words felt inadequate. Instead, she reached out and touched his arm, a brief gesture of solidarity. Rowan nodded once, as though understanding. Then he squared his shoulders and walked toward the mine entrance. "Let me show you what they did." The mine entrance was blocked by a pile of rubble, the collapsed supports still visible beneath the fallen rock. Rowan pointed to one of the beams, its surface marked by clean, straight cuts. "See that? That is not damage from a rockslide. That is a saw cut, deliberate and precise. Someone came here before dawn, cut through the supports just enough that they would fail under pressure, and then left. When Robert went into the mine that morning, the weight of the rocks overhead did the rest." Kendra crouched beside the beam, running her fingers over the cut marks. They were smooth and even, unmistakable. "This is murder," she said, her voice hard. "Yes, and whoever did it knew what they were doing. They knew enough about mining to know exactly where to cut to bring the whole thing down. Victor Kane, most likely. He worked mines before he became Holt's foreman. He would know." Kendra stood, looking at the collapsed entrance. "Can we dig it out, clear the rubble and get back into the mine?" "Eventually. But it will take time and manpower. The silver vein is deep inside." We cannot reach it until we clear the entrance and shore up the supports properly. Then that is what we will do. Kendra turned to face him. We will clear the mine, we will find proof that Cain did this, and we will make sure he pays for Robert's death. Rowan studied her in the fading light. You are determined. I am angry, Kendra corrected, and I do not like being threatened or dismissed. Robert gave me a future. The least I can do is fight for his justice. A faint smile tugged at the corner of Rowan's mouth. Robert would have liked you. They spent the night in the cabin, clearing out the debris and making it habitable. The cabin was small, just 2 rooms with a fireplace and a simple stove. Robert's belongings were still there, his clothes folded neatly on a shelf, his tools hung on the wall. It felt like walking through a ghost's life, touching things that still held the shape of his presence. Kendra found a journal on a shelf beside the bed. She opened it, seeing Robert's handwriting on the pages, notes about the mine and the silver vein, sketches of the claim and plans for the house he had wanted to build. There were entries about her too, short notes about the letters they had exchanged, his thoughts about what kind of life they might build together. She seems practical. One entry read, "Not given to fancy or sentiment. I think we will suit each other well." Another entry, dated a week before his death. "The bride arrives in 3 weeks. I need to finish the house frame before then. She deserves better than this cabin." And the last entry, written the night before he died. "Something is wrong. Tools have been moved. I think someone was here while I was in town. Need to be careful. Need to keep Rowan safe. Need to keep Kendra safe if something happens to me." Tears stung Kendra's eyes. She closed the journal carefully and set it back on the shelf. Robert Ashford had been a stranger, but he had cared about her in his own quiet way. He had tried to protect her even in death. She would not fail him now. The next morning, they began the work of clearing the mine entrance. It was brutal labor, moving rocks and rubble piece by piece, testing each section for stability before proceeding. Rowan worked with grim efficiency, and Kendra matched his pace, ignoring the way her muscles screamed in protest. Days blurred together. Wake before dawn, work until exhaustion forced them to stop, collapse into sleep and do it again. The weather turned cold, frost covering the ground in the mornings, their breath misting in the air. But slowly, steadily, the pile of rubble shrank. They uncovered more of the cut supports, documenting everything with careful sketches. Rowan found a camera Robert had owned and took photographs, capturing the evidence they would need. On the 5th day, a rider approached the claim. Kendra saw him first, a figure on horseback coming up the trail. She called out to Rowan, and he emerged from the mine entrance, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. The rider was a man in his 30s, well-dressed, with a polished saddle and a fine horse. He dismounted and walked toward them with the easy confidence of someone used to being obeyed. "You must be Rowan Anders," he said, his voice smooth. "And the orc bride, I presume?" "Kendra Pruett," Kendra said evenly. "Who are you?" "My name is Cyrus Holt. I own the mining operations in this territory." He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I heard you were back at the claim. I wanted to pay my respects and offer my condolences for Robert Ashford's death. A terrible tragedy." "It was murder," Rowan said bluntly. Holt's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "I heard you were making such claims. The sheriff tells me you have no evidence." "We have plenty of evidence. Someone sabotaged the mine supports. We have photographs and witnesses." "Witnesses?" Holt's eyebrows rose. "Who?" Rowan did not answer. Kendra could sense his wariness, the tension in his stance. Holt was dangerous, a predator in expensive clothes. "I came here to make you an offer," Holt said, switching tactics. "The claim is valuable, but it is also dangerous, especially now. You have already lost one partner, Anders. It would be a shame to lose another, or to see Miss Pruett hurt." "Is that a threat?" Kendra asked. "Not at all. Merely a statement of fact. Mining is dangerous work. Accidents happen." Holt pulled a folded paper from his coat. "I am prepared to offer you $10,000 for the claim. That is more than fair, and it would allow you both to walk away with your lives and your fortunes intact." "The claim is not for sale," Kendra said. Holt looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. "Miss Pruett, with all due respect, you are an orc woman on a frontier claim. You have no experience with mining, no support, and no friends in this territory. How long do you think you can survive out here?" "As long as it takes," Kendra replied. "Then you are a fool." Holt's voice turned cold. "I tried to be reasonable. I tried to offer you a way out. But if you insist on staying, you will learn what happens to people who refuse to cooperate." He turned and walked back to his horse, mounting in one smooth motion. "You have 3 days to reconsider my offer. After that, I cannot guarantee your safety." He rode away, disappearing down the trail. Kendra and Rowan stood in silence, watching him go. "He killed Robert," Kendra said quietly. "Or had him killed," Rowan agreed. "But we still cannot prove it. Then we need to find Victor Kane. If we can get him to confess, or if we can find someone who saw him here that day, we will have what we need. Kane will not be easy to find. And even if we find him, he will not confess willingly." Kendra met his gaze. "Then we make him." They worked through the rest of the day and into the evening, finally clearing the last of the rubble from the mine entrance. Rowan inspected the tunnel beyond, testing the remaining supports. The damage was extensive, but not irreparable. With time and work, they could make it safe again. That night, as they sat by the fire in the cabin, Rowan pulled out a map of the territory and spread it on the table. "Holt has a main office in Greystone and a processing mill about 10 miles north of here," he said, tracing lines on the map. "That is where Kane spends most of his time, overseeing operations. If we want to find him, that is where we should look. What if he is not there? Then we wait. Or we ask around, find out where he goes when he is not working. Someone will know." Kendra studied the map. "We have 3 days before Holt's deadline. We need to move fast." "Agreed. We will go to the mill tomorrow, see what we can find out." Rowan folded the map. "But we need to be careful. If Holt realizes what we are doing, he will move against us. He already threatened us. Threats are just words. I am talking about action. If he thinks we are getting too close to the truth, he will try to stop us permanently." Kendra nodded. She understood the risk. But she also understood that they had no choice. They could not let Robert's killer go free. They could not let Holt win. The next morning, they rode north toward Holt's processing mill. The trail was rough, cutting through dense forest and across narrow streams. The air was crisp and cold, the sky a clear, bright blue. The mill appeared around midday, a sprawling complex of buildings and machinery set in a wide clearing. Smoke rose from the chimneys and the sound of hammering echoed through the trees. Men moved between the buildings, hauling ore and working the machinery. Rowan and Kendra dismounted at the edge of the clearing, keeping to the cover of the trees. They watched the mill, looking for any sign of Victor Kane. "There," Rowan said, pointing. "That is him." Kendra followed his gaze and saw a large man with a scarred face and a permanent scowl. He was shouting orders at a group of workers, his voice harsh and commanding. "He looks charming," Kendra murmured. "He is a brute. Robert and I had run-ins with him before. He likes to intimidate people, uses his size and his reputation to get what he wants." They watched as Kane finished berating the workers and stalked toward one of the buildings. He disappeared inside and Rowan made a decision. "Wait here," he said. "I am going to see if I can get close, hear what he is talking about inside. That is too dangerous, maybe, but we need information." Rowan handed her the reins to his horse. If something goes wrong, ride back to the claim and get help. Do not try to fight Kane yourself. Rowan, promise me. Kendra hesitated, then nodded. Be careful. Rowan slipped through the trees, moving with surprising stealth for a man of his size. Kendra watched him go, her heart hammering in her chest. The minutes stretched, each one feeling like an hour. She kept her eyes on the building where Kane had gone, watching for any sign of trouble. Then she heard voices. Shouting. The door of the building burst open and Kane emerged, dragging Rowan by the collar. Two other men followed, both armed with clubs. Kendra's mind went blank with panic. She saw Kane throw Rowan to the ground, saw him raise his boot to kick him, and something inside her snapped. She mounted the gray and spurred it forward, bursting from the trees at a gallop. The horse thundered across the clearing, scattering workers. Kane looked up, his eyes widening in surprise as Kendra bore down on him. She pulled the mare to a halt and leaped from the saddle, putting herself between Kane and Rowan. Enough, she said, her voice ringing out. Kane stared at her, then laughed. Well, well, the orc bride. Come to save your partner, leave him alone. Or what? You will glare at me. Kane stepped forward, towering over her. You should have taken Holt's offer and gone home, girl. Now you are going to learn what happens to people who do not listen. He reached for her, but Kendra was faster. She ducked under his arm and drove her fist into his stomach, all her strength behind the blow. Kane doubled over, gasping, and she followed with a knee to his face. He went down hard, blood pouring from his nose. The two men with clubs rushed forward, but Rowan was on his feet now, grabbing a discarded shovel from the ground. He swung it like a weapon, catching one man across the jaw and sending him sprawling. The other man hesitated, then turned and ran. Workers were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. Kendra could see fear and uncertainty on their faces, but also something else: curiosity, interest. Victor Kane murdered Robert Ashford, Kendra shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. He sabotaged the mine supports and caused the rockslide that killed him, and he did it on Cyrus Holt's orders. Kane struggled to his feet, blood streaming down his face. That is a lie, he snarled. You have no proof. We have the cut supports, we have photographs, and we have witnesses who saw you in town the day before Robert died. Kendra's voice was hard and steady. You are a murderer, Kane. And everyone here knows it. The workers were murmuring now, exchanging glances. Kane looked around and saw the doubt in their eyes. He spat blood on the ground and pointed at Kendra. I will kill you for this, he said. You and Anders both. Try it, Kendra said. I dare you. Kane lunged at her, but Rowan was there, driving the shovel into Kane's knee. The big man went down with a howl of pain, clutching his leg. Rowan stood over him, his face cold. You are going to confess, Rowan said. You are going to tell everyone what you did, and you are going to face justice for it. Go to hell, Kane spat. One of the workers stepped forward. He was an older man, weathered and lean, with the look of someone who had spent his life underground. I saw Kane near the Ashford claim the morning of the rockslide, he said. I was checking my own traps in the woods, and I saw him riding away from there just after dawn. I thought it was strange at the time, but I did not say anything. Another worker spoke up. Kane told me a week before the accident that Ashford would not be a problem much longer. I thought he meant Holt would buy him out. Now I am not so sure. More voices joined in, workers sharing suspicions and observations they had kept quiet out of fear. Kane's face went white, then red with fury. He tried to stand, but his injured knee gave out and he collapsed again. You are all liars, he shouted. Holt will hear about this, he will make you pay. Holt is not here, Rowan said, and you are going to the sheriff. Now. They bound Kane's hands and put him on a horse, Rowan keeping a tight grip on the reins. Several of the workers volunteered to ride with them to Greystone, willing to testify about what they had seen and heard. Kendra rode beside Rowan, her body still thrumming with adrenaline. "That was reckless," Rowan said quietly, but there was no anger in his voice, only something that might have been admiration. "You would have done the same for me," Kendra replied. "Yes, I would have." They rode into Greystone as the sun was setting, a procession of horses and grim-faced men. Sheriff Dawson came out of his office, his eyes widening when he saw Kane bound and bloodied on the horse. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. "Victor Kane murdered Robert Ashford," Rowan said. "We have witnesses and evidence, and Kane is going to confess." Kane snarled something obscene, but the sheriff ignored him, looking at the workers who had come forward. He questioned them one by one, his expression growing darker with each testimony. Finally, he turned to Kane. "Looks like you have some explaining to do," he said. "Get him in a cell." They dragged Kane into the jail and the sheriff locked the door behind him. Then he turned to Rowan and Kendra. "I will need to see your evidence," he said. "The photographs and the cut supports, and I will need statements from both of you." "You will have them," Rowan said. "But this is not over." Kane was following orders. "Cyrus Holt is behind this." The sheriff's face went carefully blank. "That is another accusation. Do you have proof?" "We will get it," Kendra said, "one way or another." They spent the next 2 days in Greystone, working with the sheriff and the judge to build the case against Kane. The workers who had testified were given protection, and more came forward as word spread. People who had been afraid to speak, but who now saw an opportunity for justice. Kane refused to implicate Holt, insisting he had acted alone. But the evidence was overwhelming, and Judge Harlan ordered him held for trial on charges of murder. It was a victory, but a hollow one. They had the man who had done the killing, but the man who had ordered it remained free. On the 3rd day, as Kendra and Rowan prepared to ride back to the claim, a messenger arrived at the boarding house where they were staying. He handed Rowan a sealed letter, then disappeared before they could ask questions. Rowan broke the seal and read the letter, his face hardening. "What is it?" Kendra asked. "It is from Holt." Rowan handed her the letter. The letter was brief and to the point. "You have made a grave mistake," it read. "Kane was a fool to get caught, but his failure does not change anything. The claim is mine, and I will take it by whatever means necessary. You have until the end of the week to reconsider my offer. If you do not, I will see you buried beside Ashford." Kendra folded the letter carefully. "He is threatening us directly now. He is desperate. We hurt him by exposing Kane. Now he is lashing out. What do we do?" Rowan was silent for a long moment, staring out the window at the street below. Then he turned to face her. "We finish this. We go to the claim, we get it running again, and we make it so valuable that even Holt cannot touch it without drawing too much attention. We make ourselves too big to destroy. And if he comes after us anyway, then we fight." Rowan's gray eyes were steady. "I am done running. I am done letting men like Holt take what is not theirs. Robert stood his ground and it killed him. But at least he died fighting for something that mattered. I intend to do the same." Kendra felt something shift inside her, a certainty settling into place. "So do I." They rode back to the claim, arriving just as the sun was setting. The cabin looked different now, more like a home and less like a ghost's dwelling. They had cleaned it, repaired it, made it theirs. The mine entrance was clear, the supports shored up and safe. Over the following weeks, they worked the mine together, extracting silver and stockpiling it in the cabin. It was hard work, dangerous and exhausting, but they fell into a rhythm. Rowan would work the deeper sections, while Kendra hauled ore to the surface and processed it. In the evenings, they would cook simple meals over the fire and plan the next day's work. Slowly, Kendra began to see Rowan as more than just Robert's partner, more than just an ally in a dangerous fight. She saw his steadiness, his quiet competence, the way he never complained even when the work was brutal. She saw the grief he carried for Robert, the guilt that he had not been there to save him. And she saw the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not watching, with something that might have been respect or might have been something deeper. She did not know when her own feelings had changed. Perhaps it had been that first moment in the clearing when she had charged Cain to save him. Or perhaps it had been earlier, on the trail to Greystone, when he had given her his blanket without being asked. Or perhaps it had been there all along, a seed planted in the first moment he had handed her Robert's letter, and she had seen the sorrow in his eyes. But she knew now, with certainty, that she cared about Rowan Anders in a way that went beyond partnership or gratitude. She did not speak of it. The timing felt wrong, the circumstances too fraught. They were still fighting for their lives, still trying to bring justice for Robert. There would be time for other conversations later if they survived. But she caught herself watching him more often, noticing the way his shoulders moved when he swung the pickaxe, the way his hair fell across his forehead when he was concentrating. She noticed the small kindnesses he showed her, the way he always made sure she had enough to eat, the way he checked the cabin locks every night to make sure she was safe. One evening, as they sat by the fire after a long day's work, Rowan pulled out Robert's journal. "I found something," he said, flipping to a page near the back. Robert wrote about the vein. He thought it extended further than we initially mapped into the hillside behind the cabin. If he was right, there could be twice as much silver as we thought. Kendra leaned closer to look at the sketches Robert had made. "Can we reach it? We would need to dig a new shaft, but yes, it would take time, but it would be worth it." Rowan looked up at her. "If we can prove the vein is as rich as Robert thought, it will be harder for Holt to justify taking the claim. The territorial government pays attention when major strikes are involved. There are laws about claim jumping and judges who enforce them." "Then we dig," Kendra said. They began work on the new shaft the next morning, carving into the hillside with picks and shovels. The work was slow and painstaking, but after 3 days, they broke through into a new chamber. The silver vein was there, exactly where Robert had predicted, gleaming in the lamplight. "He was right," Rowan breathed. "It is even bigger than he thought." They documented everything, taking photographs and making detailed maps. Then they rode back to Greystone to file an expansion claim with the territorial office. Judge Harlan reviewed their evidence and approved the expansion, granting them rights to the new section. "This is a significant find," the judge said. "You will need to hire workers to help extract it, and you will need security. A claim this valuable will attract attention." "We can handle it," Kendra said. "I hope so, Miss Pruett. But be careful, Cyrus Holt does not like to lose." They hired 3 men from Greystone, workers who had testified against Cain and who were willing to stand up to Holt. They set up a rotation so that someone was always at the claim, watching for trouble. And they began the work of extracting the silver from the new vein, methodically and carefully. Weeks passed. Autumn gave way to early winter, frost covering the ground and snow dusting the peaks. The work continued, the pile of processed silver growing steadily. They sold small amounts in Greystone, enough to cover expenses and prove the claim's value, but they kept most of it, building reserves. Holt sent men to the claim twice more, making threats and trying to intimidate the workers. But each time, Rowan and Kendra stood firm and the workers stood with them. Word spread through the territory about the Orc bride and the stoic miner who had defied Cyrus Holt and won. It made them heroes to some, targets to others, but it also made them strong. On a cold morning in early December, Sheriff Dawson rode up to the claim with unexpected news. Victor Kane had confessed. Facing the overwhelming evidence and the prospect of hanging, he had admitted to sabotaging the mine and to acting on Holt's orders. The confession had been witnessed and recorded, and Judge Harlan had issued a warrant for Holt's arrest. "He tried to run," Dawson said, his face grim. "We caught him at the territorial border. He is in jail now, awaiting trial." Kendra felt something release in her chest, a tension she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. "It is over. The legal part, yes. Holt will stand trial for conspiracy to commit murder. With Kane's confession and all the evidence you gathered, he will be convicted." Dawson looked between them. "You did good work, both of you. Robert Ashford would be proud." After the sheriff left, Kendra and Rowan stood together in front of the cabin, looking out over the claim. The mine entrance was open and productive, the new shaft yielding silver every day. The cabin was warm and sturdy, smoke rising from the chimney. The land was theirs, truly and completely, bought with sweat and blood and determination. "We did it," Kendra said softly. "We did," Rowan agreed. He was quiet for a moment, then added, "Robert would have liked seeing this. Seeing the claim thriving, seeing you here. I wish I could have known him. He would have been a good husband to you, steady and honest. He would have given you a good life." Kendra turned to look at Rowan. "But he is not here, and I cannot spend my life mourning a man I never met." Rowan met her gaze, something vulnerable flickering in his gray eyes. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I came here for a future, Rowan, for a chance at something better. Robert gave me that chance, and I am grateful. But the future I want now is not the one I imagined when I stepped off that coach. It is different. It is here, on this claim, with the work and the silver and the life we are building together." She took a breath. "It is with you." Rowan was very still. "Kendra, I know the timing is not perfect. I know we are still dealing with the aftermath of everything that happened. But I need you to know how I feel. I care about you, Rowan, more than I should, maybe, more than I plan to, and if you feel anything at all for me, I would like to know." For a long moment, Rowan said nothing. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough and warm against hers. "I have been trying not to feel anything for you," he said quietly. "You were Robert's bride. It felt wrong to think of you any other way, but you are right. Robert is gone. And you are here, and you are brave and stubborn, and you saved my life. And I am tired of pretending I do not care about you." Kendra's heart was pounding. "So what do? We take it slow. We give ourselves time to be sure. And when we are ready, we build something together. Not because of a contract or an arrangement, but because we choose it." Rowan's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "If that is what you want." "It is," Kendra said. "It is exactly what I want." They stood together in the cold morning air, hands clasped, looking out at the claim that was theirs. It was not the future either of them had planned. It was something different, something earned through hardship and loss and stubborn determination. But it was theirs, and it was real. Winter deepened. They worked the mine, extracted silver, and built up their savings. Holt's trial took place in January, a swift proceeding that ended with a guilty verdict. He was sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison, and his mining operations were broken up and sold to pay his debts. The workers who had stood with Kendra and Rowan found new positions, and the territory began to heal from the corruption that had poisoned it. Spring came slowly, melting the snow and bringing green back to the hillsides. Kendra and Rowan hired more workers and expanded the mine operations, processing more silver than they had ever dreamed possible. The claim became one of the most productive in the territory, and with that success came legitimacy. No one questioned Kendra's right to be there anymore. No one threatened her or told her to go home. She had found her home, and it was here on a warm evening in early May, as the sun set golden over the mountains. Rowan took Kendra's hand and led her up the hillside behind the cabin. There, on a flat overlook, he had built the frame of a house. It was Robert's design, the house he had planned to build for his bride, but Rowan had adapted it, making it larger and stronger. "I wanted to finish what he started," Rowan said, "but I wanted it to be ours." Kendra walked through the frame, imagining walls and windows, rooms filled with furniture and life. "It is perfect. It will take time to finish, but we have time now." Rowan turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before: nervousness, hope. "Kendra, I know we agreed to take things slow, and we have. We have worked together, lived together, built this claim together, and every day I am more certain that I do not want to do any of it without you." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring, forged from the metal they had mined together. "I am not asking you to honor a contract someone else wrote," Rowan said. "I am asking you to marry me because I love you, because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Because you are the bravest, most stubborn, most remarkable woman I have ever known, and I want to spend the rest of my days proving that I am worthy of you." Tears blurred Kendra's vision. She had come to this place expecting duty and partnership, expecting to build a life with a stranger out of necessity. She had never expected love. She had never expected this overwhelming feeling of rightness, of coming home to a person rather than a place. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, I will marry you." Rowan slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, and she held him tightly, feeling his heart beating against hers. They stood together on the hillside as the sun set. Two people who had found each other in the shadow of loss and grief, who had built something beautiful out of pain. They were married a month later in Greystone, in a simple ceremony attended by the workers from the claim and the few friends they had made in town. Judge Harlan officiated, his stern face softening as he pronounced them husband and wife. There was a celebration afterward, with food and music and laughter, and for the first time in months, Kendra felt truly at peace. They finished the house by autumn, moving their belongings from the cabin into the larger, brighter space. The mine continued to produce, and they reinvested the profits into improvements, building a proper processing facility and hiring a manager so they could spend less time underground and more time living. On a cool October evening, Kendra stood on the porch of the house, watching the sun set over the mountains. Rowan came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever thought possible," Kendra replied. She thought about Robert sometimes, about the man she had never met who had given her this chance. She had placed flowers on his grave in Greystone, had thanked him silently for his sacrifice. His death had been unjust and cruel, but it had also led her here to this life, to this love. She hoped, wherever he was, that he knew his gift had not been wasted. The mine reopened fully in the spring, under both their names, Kendra Pruett Anders and Rowan Anders. They stood together at the entrance for the ceremony. Local officials and workers gathered to witness the moment. A ribbon was stretched across the entrance, and Judge Harlan handed Kendra a pair of shears. "This claim has a troubled history," the judge said, "but it also has a new future, built on justice and hard work and the courage of two people who refuse to give up. I can think of no better way to begin again." Kendra cut the ribbon and it fell away, the mine entrance clear and open. Workers filed in, beginning the day's labor, and the sound of picks and shovels rang out across the valley. She turned to Rowan and found him watching her with quiet pride. He took her hand and they walked together into the mine, side by side, partners in every sense of the word. The darkness closed around them, but their lamps burned bright, lighting the way forward. They had come through fire and loss, through grief and danger, and they had emerged stronger. The claim was theirs, the future was theirs, and they would face whatever came next together. And that, Kendra thought as they descended into the earth, was more than enough.